tell me about the weekend, man. How was your weekend?
I'll tell you what, it was a great weekend for us. We were home. We weren't traveling for basketball. It was good.
Yeah.
But our youngest son, Mason, had a 3D archery tournament that he just loves doing. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this before, but that's something that I did when I was really young before I had kids. I shot archery professionally, and I traveled all over the United States doing that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was sponsored.
You never shared that with me.
Well, it was just a long time ago. So I did that, and I achieved some really, really good success in that. And I put it away. When I had kids, I just put it away, and I stopped traveling and stopped shooting. And my boy, when we started bow hunting, he's like, hey, I want to do more. Well, can we shoot 3D shoots? And the kid, he gets it. He's got that natural talent, that ability, and he is great. So we had a big win there. I haven't seen the final standings, but I feel like he did pretty good. No, it's a Triple Crown, and he won it last year, so he's trying to repeat.
That's awesome. So what is that? What is a 3D shoot?
So
what is that?
What it is they have 3D foam animal targets, and they set them up at different yards. This one was actually held in the arena at the fairgrounds.
Nice.
Dirt floor, and of course you've got. I'll bet there was probably 200 shooters there. A lot.
Wow. So does he have an age group then?
Yeah, he's young adult. So this is his last year in young adults. So he's trying to defend there. But
nice.
You had a weekend.
Yeah, and I'm back in today, right? We just got in this morning. It was an early morning. We did the Spartan races over this weekend, dude. And so that's my 5th and 6th races that I've done over the last couple years.
You've done 6 of those?
6, yeah. We got the trifecta done the first year, and then I only did 1 last year. And then, I got 2 knocked out this weekend with 2 really great buddies. And it was their first time, so it was fun to do that. And
you did 2 in 1 weekend.
Yeah, dude. It was, I almost only did 1. Yeah, the body was about ready to kind of shut down on me that night on Saturday night.
No kidding.
Dude, there was a lot of ibuprofen and a lot of praying.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, Lord, don't let me come all the way down here so I can't do another race. Come on. So yeah, it was intense. It was good. I mean, it was fun. And I just had so much fun watching them go through the pain and agony for the first time, right? I knew what I was getting into, but they had no clue. So it was fun to be down there. And then we've got a really good friend that lives down there. We went to Arizona, so it was a really quick trip. We got in there late on Friday and then left early this morning. And it was just so much fun to be around him. And I know that he really enjoyed being around some guys. So yeah, it was good, man.
This is the thing. If I live the rest of my life and never do a Spartan race, I'm okay with that.
No, you're not.
I really am,
No,
Josh.
not,
I see no reason to go abuse myself like that. But I'm glad you do it. Now, you and I, we don't have to agree on this. I mean, that's just not something that's real important in my life.
Right.
But I want to understand this. I want to get in your head just a little bit and figure out why, first of all, you would spend. Now I understand, taking care of yourself and physically and being in shape. Mm-hmm. But why would you train so hard to go down there and abuse yourself so much? Like I get it. Some people are really into that. Like, gym owners, for example, right? That guy kind of has something to prove. He's got to be down there doing it. But why does a guy, successful CEO, put himself through that? Like, what's the mindset?
Yeah, I think it multiple reasons. One of course, obviously, just as a ex. I get this from my buddies, an ex-pro jock, and I'm like, yeah, ex for sure. Right? I think just like competitiveness, right? When you get to a certain age, and you just lose the ability to compete at certain things, And I gave up basketball and I gave up softball a number of years ago, and to find another sport that really I don't have to depend on anybody else to do. I mean, this is really just a me thing in a sense. That it's been really life-giving over the last couple of years to be challenged and to be pushed, right? And to be uncomfortable and to really push your body and your mind more than anything else. It was the mental part of it that's been the most satisfying thing that's come out of it. Mm-hmm. Every time that I run these races, I'm always thinking about how those experiences really can play into my life, right? Like the lessons I learned from that. And so, the first one I did, it was the most memorable one, and it was the most intense, most painful one. And it also was the most revealing mentally to me of the takeaways that I experienced from that, right? And so I look forward to that because, if we're always talking about growing, right? And how do you grow? Well, you grow when you're stretched. You grow when you're when you're backed into the corner and you don't really know what to do and you got to figure stuff out, right? I mean, I just did this podcast last week on this. Is had a horrible 2 weeks, and I had to grow from it though, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't just going to play the victim in it, and I had to figure out that process. And then these Spartan races really do a fantastic job for me of putting me in situations of discomfort, of some pain, of just some the mental part of it of going, you know what? I know my body doesn't want me to do it, but I can control my mind. Right?
Sure.
If I can control my will and my mind and my spirit, then the body's going to follow it.
Yeah.
And so it's just been a really great way for me to push myself to a limit and a level that nothing else was offering to me to do that.
Yeah. So, it's always been said that the body fuels the mind.
Right.
And I think this is kind of a throwback to that. You're like, hey, if I can overcome this stuff mentally and prove to myself that I'm physically able when I think I'm not.
Right.
Like David Goggins, right? There's a reason for people like him. He's telling you that. He's saying, hey, if you can overcome it upstairs, you can overcome it in the whatever it is you're doing. So I admire that. I admire people like you. I admire people like him. I'm trying to understand, so give me some takeaways. How about that? How about you give me some takeaways about this particular race and let me know, relate them to our business.
Right. Okay. I love it, man. So every time I run these races, I really do sit down afterwards and try to remember the emotions I was going through during the race. Mm-hmm. And so I came up with these 10 takeaways from this race. And I don't know if we'll get through all 10 of them this episode. If we don't, we'll wrap them up and get them on the next one. So number one was make the first decision. And the reason that was so important for me to think about that is because, we made this decision to do this race as a group of us guys. Mm-hmm. We made this decision all the way back in October. And it was the process from October all the way until this day, this weekend, right? And when it comes to life, I find so many times we just don't make the first decision, right? Yeah. We don't do the first thing it takes to start to accomplish this goal that we have, right? Mm-hmm. So, whether that's sign up or buy the thing or make the call or make the appointment, we're just not willing to do the first thing. It's always an idea. It's always a thought. It's always something we should do, right? And as I was going through the first day's event, I just kept on thinking, I got these two guys running with me. This is the first time they've done it. And it was seeds that were planted months and months prior to us even committing to it, right? Okay. It was something that I talked enough about with other people, and they've experienced it of just some things that I've gone through. And it was those seeds that kind of had germinated, and it was growing and growing. And then finally it was all right, I've just got to be the first one to make the decision that we're going to do this. And I'm just going to throw this out there. So I got to text together and say, hey, done some research. The schedules were released today. I said, I think we could do this. These are the dates. This is what we should do. And I just made the decision. And I'm like, who's in? And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are waiting for somebody else to make the decision.
Sure.
Right? They're waiting for somebody else to come in and save the day or to do the thing, right? And they just kind of want to tag along. And not enough people are just saying, all right, I'm going to lead because it's too important that this gets done.
Okay.
So I think the first one, once again, was just the first one for me was make the decision.
And so do you feel like these other two guys would have gone ahead and done that had you not led them into that? No. Okay.
No.
So that's good. And let's look at that from a leadership standpoint, right? How many times do we say, hey, if you just do this in your business, hey, if you just do this in your business, and I just read an email that you forwarded to me, and it was by somebody else in our industry, and she said in this email, you got to lead from the field.
Right.
That is so true, right? And sometimes that's all it takes to get these people on board. So great takeaway.
Yeah. It really, once again, as I was thinking about it, how many times in my life, and this is something that's been, I've changed because my word for 2019 was action. Mm-hmm. So I knew that in order for me to have action in my life, I needed to make decisions first, and I needed to make decisions for me, because when I was not making decisions for myself, I was actually making them against myself. And I think often too many people, when they realize, like, when they don't make a decision, it's not like things stay the same. You make a decision against yourself in order to move forward, right? To make progress, which is so important for all of us in our lives to continue to make progress. And so once again, like, my first takeaway just from that was just like, this is awesome. Like, we're down here in Arizona right now. We're down here ready to do these 2 races. We're down here for a guys' weekend, and it's all because a decision was made and we all agreed to do it.
Yeah. How many times does lack of a decision end up being a decision against you?
Exactly.
Right? We've all suffered from that at some point in our lives. So, you know what? That is great. And again, it also goes back to having those people around you, those people on your team.
Yeah. One of the things that we always struggle as leaders is like, how do we make progress and we move forward without leaving people behind, right? How do we continue to just move forward? And so my second takeaway on this was like, was set the pace, but don't leave them behind.
Okay.
And so as I was running the race, I've done this before. Like I said, like, this was my 5th and 6th time. I knew the obstacles that were potentially coming up. I knew the terrain a little bit because I've had worse terrain. And so I was very comfortable with what I was getting into. These guys were just figuring it out as they went. And, they were already kind of nervous about, like, well, how tough is that going to be? And I heard this was a really hard challenge and this obstacle really sucks. And I don't want to do burpees. And, all of these things that they were already thinking of as landmines that were going to come up.
Yeah.
So they were so worried about all of these distractions. And I was so focused on the next opportunity, right? I was focused on what was going to happen next. And so I was able to lead and be at a really good pace. And, sometimes there was more separation than others because I was just staying steady with my pace, right? But every time I got done with an obstacle, I always waited.
Okay.
Always waited because we were doing this as a team. We're doing this as as an organization in a sense, right? And so as I think about this, is how many times does the leader outpace the pack and they don't turn back? They don't look back and make sure that everybody else is following. They don't make sure that everybody else is keeping up. They don't make sure that the ones that have fallen, that they're not getting picked up, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think too often in businesses is that you have leaders that just are so focused on moving forward that they forget everybody in the back.
You bet. Yeah, we've all seen examples of that. So now in this particular situation, did everybody finish?
Oh yeah, we all finished. And here's the thing, right? I could have ran the race faster.
Yeah.
I really could. I felt great. I could have done it. But why? I mean, I run it 2 minutes faster. I run it 5 minutes faster, and I don't finish with the team. I don't finish with the guys. Like, what does that really build, right? And the whole reason why we did this together was so that we could build camaraderie, that we could build a team in this whole thing, right? And we were going to do something together as men and build that relationship, right? And oftentimes, once again, I just go back to business. I go back to our relationships, right? How many times in relationships do you just leave people in the dust and you don't put the effort in making sure that they get through that challenging time in their life? And then the next thing you know, you wake up and you don't have that friendship anymore. And really, at the end of the day, you have yourself to blame.
Yeah, you're standing there alone.
Right, exactly. And life is not meant to be alone, right?
No.
Now, listen, I can hear people already going, well, as a leader, I mean, your relationships are going to change, and you can't wait for everybody. I get that. It's all, we want progress, right? Those people will take themselves off the team.
Yeah.
I'm talking about team members. I'm talking about people that want to be on the team, that are striving to do it. They just don't have the skills that you have right now, right? They don't have the experience you have right now, but they're doing everything they can. It's like these guys behind me, like they were doing everything they could to keep the pace and do the thing. They just didn't have the experience yet. And I guarantee the next race that we run, they'll be that much better at it, right? And they'll be maybe outpacing me, right? And that's what life's about. That's what business is about, is helping those people continue to go on that pace and be better than they were the time before.
And how encouraging was it for those guys to know after 2 or 3 obstacles, to know that you were there waiting for them, encouraging them on, helping them through that?
Right. And yeah, I think that was, they knew that I wasn't going to leave them, right?
Yeah.
But I also think too, is that one of the things that they appreciated, because I've been in the back, right? Mike, he leads the pace when I run with him, right? That dude is an animal, right? But I love the fact that he can go, because it also pushes me. Like, hey, listen, don't get comfortable at what you think this pace is, because you can do so much more, right? So I do have to drive harder. I do have to push myself harder. And that's exactly what those guys, they felt like, hey, listen, I know he's not going to go too far off, but I better freaking catch up. I better maintain, and I better push a little bit harder right here. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that was also the great thing that came out of it, is that they even pushed to a level that they were a little bit uncomfortable with and didn't quite know that they could get to, because they had a person in front of them pushing that pace.
Nice.
So, all right, now this is number 2. Number 3 here. Hey, listen, some things are out of your control. I talked about this on the last podcast, and this was really like, it's kind of funny how this is all building up. For 2 weeks, I was going through that uncomfort of the energy levels and stuff that I was, battling and stuff.
Yep.
And I just realized how many things were really out of my control. Right. And then this weekend, there were things that you just couldn't do anything about it, right? I couldn't do anything about the weather. I couldn't do anything about how cold the water was. I couldn't do anything about how many people were signing up. And as I was going through the events, there were some things that were challenging, and I just had to be I'm not going to get upset because of the things that I can't control. I can control myself. I can control my emotions. I can control how much effort I put in this, but there are so many things that I can't control. And in that terrain, in that moment, I was able to see how many things truly were not in my control. And it was very humbling again, right? And I'd just gotten through 2 weeks of being humbled with the things that I thought I was in control of. And it was just a great reminder once again of going through really challenging times, really challenging event, and seeing how much control I didn't have, but I just had to be good with that. And I really feel like a lot of people don't understand that.
So my understanding of the Spartan races is there are obstacles, right? Those obstacles are there for a reason.
Right.
But I also understand that you have an alternative to an obstacle. Is that right?
Yeah.
You can do the burpees.
Right.
And for those of us who don't know exactly what that is, explain a burpee.
Oh, it's just you want to throw up in your mouth. That's
Really?
what it is. Yeah. No, I mean, you do a jump, with your hands above, and then you get down and you almost kind of do a push up. And then once again, you got to push yourself all the way up. You got to stand up. You got to do a jump and go down. I don't know if I'm explaining that really well, but it is tough, and you have to do 30 of them, right?
You basically go from a push-up position all the way up to jumping straight up in the air, right?
Yeah,
and you do that multiple times.
Yeah, 30 times for every one that you fail.
Yikes.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't sound that bad. I'm going to just tell you, go and do it. I mean, those that you're listening, you probably have done those before, so you know the pain that really comes along with it. But, the first day we had 28 obstacles. So you have 28 opportunities to fail and do 30 burpees, right? That's a lot. It's a ton. And there were people that were doing it a lot. I mean, one of the things that brings you anxiety is that you just don't want to fail.
Yeah.
So you have to do these because it takes everything out of you, right? It takes the wind out of you. It takes it takes your legs out of you, right? And as much as you're in shape, man, when you do that many burpees, I don't care how good a shape you are, it really makes it very exhausting, right?
That's funny. And that's exactly where I wanted you to go with that was, hey, here's this obstacle. You can give it a half-assed attempt and then end up doing the burpees anyway, or you can give it everything you've got and hopefully not have to do the burpees too, right? Just like any obstacle in our businesses.
Yeah.
We can go in it half-hearted and see if we pass or see if we fail, or we can give it everything we got. So, and I love that, the challenges. I love that point that you made.
Well, and I mean, and you control what you can control, right? I mean, I think oftentimes we don't realize that we can give it our best and we can still fail, right? And that's kind of what happens in these obstacles. You can try everything that you can inside of you. You can mentally be there, physically be ready. And you could grab a ring and it's just too wet and you slip. You could be on one of the events and there's mud on it and your leg slips off of it and you fail that event, right? Well, it had nothing to do with anything that you could have controlled, but there's a price to be paid. And it's the same thing in life, man. It's the same thing in business. If you look at it, just look at how volatile our business is, right?
You bet.
If we have a bust, we could be doing everything right, but we can't control the environment. Right. And if we have a bust, that's going to have an effect on everything else. Well, we can't do much about that.
True.
We can protect ourselves as much as we can, but I'm telling you, at the end of the day, we've been through so many of these busts that we know there's just things that are inevitable. And as much as you try to cushion yourself, you can't do everything right all the time.
You're still going to feel it.
That's exactly right. So once again, I learned, especially over the last 2 weeks, but even just this weekend again, is that I could only be in control what I can control. Sure. And I'm going to have to be good with the things that I can't control. and that can go in, that's even a deeper conversation, because there are some really great moments that I had with my God talks and how God was talking to me. And man, I just had to give some stuff up, dude. I had to give this false sense of control up in my life. And I tell you what, I'm so much more at peace. And I tell you, I mean, that really has changed me. And once again, this weekend was another proof of that. Like, dude, I am so not in control of so much of my life.
So true.
So, all right, man. So that was, what was it? That was number 3. So now we're on number 4. All right. The journey isn't going to be easy, but it's worth it. And this is people, we say this a lot, right? And if you've listened to our podcast long enough, you know that like we're in the middle of this journey. Like we are in the weeds of this journey so much in our businesses. And it was so much fun, right? So we get done with day 1, and it was a shorter version of what I've been through. Instead of a 9-mile super, it was only a 6.4 mile super, right? And part of me was just like, man, those jerks don't even know how bad it was. Like, and it was a pretty good, like the terrain wasn't as bad. And it's like, I felt like that, that parent that always tells their kids, like, when I was your age, son, like it was school uphill both ways. And it snowed 10, 11 months out of the year, and we didn't have this. And I was kind of like, dang it, you guys didn't have to go through the hell that we went through. But we did go through, I mean, it was a challenge no matter what, right? And there was still some anxiety that night, as much as we like appreciated that day being over, because we knew there was another race, right? And it was awesome to experience when that second race was over. Like, it didn't matter how hard how bad we hurt. It didn't matter the scrapes and bruises we had. It didn't matter, like, Jason pulled his groin, I freaking hurt my knee, Brian hurt his glute. I mean, like, we had like bumps and bruises and scrapes and blood and all that stuff, right? It didn't matter. Like, the pain was worth it. Like, everything that we went through was worth it. And I think that's so much in life, is like, we don't know, like we quit too often, too early in our lives on things. We don't know that if we just kept going, if we just kept pushing, right? If we just kept doing it, it would be worth it. And unfortunately, it just happens all too often, man. People just give up on themselves. They give up on their dream. They give up on that idea way too early. And, we see it in our kids, right? We see it like the kids, unless we as parents are so proactive of really making sure that they are building that intestinal fortitude. I mean, we're going through this with Caden right now, man. I'm like, I've got to figure out a way to help him see that if he just pushed through it, that it'd be so much better on the other side of the line, man. And right now he's just challenged with that. Like right now he doesn't have that intestinal fortitude in his life yet. And I'm waiting for that event to happen. I'm waiting for something that I can't control, he can't control, and it just happens. And then that moment switches in his head and he goes, I don't ever want to feel that again. I'm going to cross the finish line,
Nice.
And I think once again, it's just that reminder, right? It's worth it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's worth it.
Yeah. And it's fun being a parent, watching your children go through something, like you said, where you have no control, they have no control, and their only option is to push through it. That's fun watching that happen. Now, I'm not talking big catastrophic stuff, but in those little wins that they have, when they see that light and they go, oh, I get it. This is what you've been telling me.
Yeah.
Those are fun. So I hope that happens soon for you.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think once again, let's just talk about that in business, right? I mean, how many people do we talk to that were just struggling and challenged and just trying to break through and it didn't feel like they're making any ground. And then the next thing they know, they're like, they broke through and they're like, oh my gosh, this is what this tastes like. This is what victory looks like. This is what accomplishment looks like in my life, right? And they're like, and you sit down and you go, okay, now that you've experienced some success, now that you've experienced some good things that have happened, was it worth it? And they're like, absolutely, and twice on Sundays.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you get to do that. I mean, so once again, and this is just a reminder for both of us too, right? I mean, I have to remind myself the same thing, like it's worth the process. It's worth the pain, right? Because I know at the end of the day, when we get there, because we will get there, it is going to be worth it because of the fruits of our labor.
Yeah. And you and I, going back to our business here, we were just having a conversation with a guy who is having some success in the business, but he used the analogy of a hamster wheel, right? And if that's not getting caught up in the grind, it would be real easy for that guy to go, you know what, this is all there is for me, I'm out.
Yeah.
And go do something completely different. But it's our job to make him realize that there's something on the other side of that. But we can't make that decision for him.
Right. Yeah. So, we just got to paint the picture, right?
You got it.
Because we've seen it and we experience it, and we get to experience it a lot, man. And that's just one of the funnest parts of our job is when we get to see that with people. All right. Okay. So number 5, and I got to stop on this because we're already going to be like 30 minutes into this. Number 5 is prepare and adjust. Prepare and adjust. Listen, I've done this once again now. This is the 6th time that I've been able to run these races. And every one of these races, you have to prepare yourself mentally, physically, even emotionally to a certain point. The first race I did, man, I said so many freaking Hail Marys I said enough Hail Marys for a lifetime in one event because of the amount of pain that I was in, the cramping and dehydration and all this, right? And I've learned that every time I prepare for these races, I have to adjust something in my workout or with my diet or something, right? But then when you run the race, you also have to adjust and continue to make adjustments during the race. There was one point I rolled my ankle. Well, I had to make an adjustment. I couldn't run the same way I was running before at the speed I was running, right? Mm-hmm. The day 2, man, I don't know what I did, but I pissed off my IT band and my knee was just killing me from the day before. And so I had to make an adjustment on how I was running for that second day, right? And I think that is such a great analogy for business, right? So many of us just we keep our heads down and we don't make the adjustments that we need to make in order to have that success. And we just say, this is the way I'm going to go. And then I just got to fight through it. And it's like, dude, if you'd have just taken 2 steps to the right, you would have gone past that milestone way faster, right? And you just kept on hitting yourself again, hitting your head against that wall. Like, no, take 2 steps to the right and try this angle, right? How many times do we see that with an independent contractor and they just try one thing all the time and it's like, dude, it's not working. What do you need to make as an adjustment? Right? If you make these 2 adjustments or these 3 adjustments in that presentation or in that follow-up or in that game plan, let's see what the success is, right? And then they have success. And unfortunately, I don't think people make enough adjustments fast enough.
You bet. And first of all, you got to have that willingness to make that adjustment, and then the willingness to hear that input, right? When we come to them, we say, hey, listen, this isn't working. What's the alternative? So many times, well, that's how I've always done it, right? So there's always an excuse there, but you've got to get beyond that.
Yeah.
And we see great successes with people when they do that.
Yeah. And I just to kind of expand on that, once again, if you have people in your life that are helping you make those adjustments, dude, you better be doing that. But also if you don't, if you're just searching around going, man, I'm just kind of solo here and I don't have enough people that I'm surrounding myself with yet. You're a young entrepreneur that you don't have enough people around you that are helping you. Dude, you have to identify that.